My name is Maria Castillo. I was 26 years old when a stranger sent me a photo of myself sleeping. I did not see it until 3 hours after it was taken. By then, he already knew I was there. And that night, while my boyfriend and I were in bed, someone threw a brick through our window. If you have your Snapchat username in your Instagram bio right now, I need you to keep listening. The snap I almost missed. I want to tell you exactly how this started because the beginning is the part that scares me most when I look back on it. I had an Instagram account with around 5,000 followers. That sounds like a lot, but it built up slowly over a few years. I posted regularly, fitness stuff, food, occasional travel photos, normal content. I had a decent engagement rate, and I got follows from strangers pretty often, mostly men, mostly harmless. I was used to it. I had my Snapchat username in my Instagram bio. A lot of people do this. It is just a convenient way to let people you know find you on another platform without them having to search. You put the username there, and if someone from Instagram wants to add you, they can. Easy. The problem was my Snapchat privacy settings. At some point, I had enabled the option that allowed anyone to send me messages and snaps, even if I had not added them back. I do not fully remember setting it that way. It might have been a default I never changed, but it meant that any of the thousands of strangers who followed me on Instagram could pull my Snapchat username from my bio, add me on Snap, and send me whatever they wanted. I got random snaps from strangers fairly often, mostly harmless stuff. A guy sending an overly enthusiastic selfie, someone trying to start a conversation. I ignored most of them or deleted without looking. It became background noise. So when a snap came in from an account I did not recognize on a Thursday afternoon, I did not open it right away. I was at my boyfriend Daniel's apartment. He lived in a first-floor unit about 12 minutes from my family's house. I spent several nights a week there, but very few people outside of close friends even knew the address. It was not on any of my social media. It was not tagged in any of my posts. As far as my Instagram following was concerned, I could have been anywhere. I was napping in Daniel's bedroom around 4 in the afternoon. He was in the living room watching football. I had my phone on, silent on the nightstand. I fell asleep, and I did not look at it again until later that evening. Around 9:30, I was going through a backlog of snaps I had not opened yet. Mostly the usual stuff. A few from friends, a couple from strangers I swiped past quickly. I came to one from an account with a username I did not recognize. No display name, no profile photo. I opened it. It took me a moment to understand what I was looking at. It was a photograph taken through a window, dark outside, dim inside. The image was slightly blurry, taken at an angle as if the camera had been held up to the glass from the outside. In the frame was a bed. In the bed was a person lying on their side under a light blanket. The person was me. I was looking at a photo of myself taken through Daniel's bedroom window while I was asleep. There was no caption, no text, nothing, just the image. I sat there on that couch and felt something move through me that I do not have a clean word for. It was not quite nausea, and it was not quite fear, and it was not quite the cold feeling you get when something suddenly makes sense in a wrong way. It was all of those things at once. I called Daniel into the room. I showed him the phone. His face went through several expressions very quickly. He took the phone and looked at the snap again carefully. Then he looked at me. Then he went to the bedroom window and looked out at the street. Dark out there, quiet, a few parked cars, nothing moving. He came back and picked up my phone and replied to the account. He typed, "Who is this?" He added the account back to be able to see the profile. The snap score was in the 50,000 range. Not a brand new account, not a bot. A real person who had been on the platform for a long time and used it regularly. A reply came back within 2 minutes. It said, "John, LOL." Daniel typed back, "We are calling the police." John replied, "Okay, cool, let me know if you need help calling them." Then the account blocked us. We sat there in that apartment for a long time. The snap had been sent in the afternoon. I had not seen it until hours later. By the time we were reading John's messages, it was past 10 at night. Anything could have happened in that window. John could still be out there. John could know that we had seen it now. John could know we were sitting right here. Daniel checked every window in the apartment, all locked. He checked the front door, locked. He stood at the bedroom window and looked out at the street for a full 2 minutes. I went through my Instagram followers looking for any account with the name John. There were several. Without a last name on the Snapchat account, there was no way to narrow it down. Someone who followed me on Instagram had pulled my Snapchat username from my bio, found out where I was staying, watched me through a window while I slept, and sent me a photograph of it. We did not call the police that night. I want to be honest about that. We talked about it, and we convinced ourselves we did not have enough to report. A creepy snap with no threat attached to it. A first name. Nothing concrete. We told ourselves we would monitor the situation and call if anything else happened. At 2:17 in the morning, something else happened. The brick, the sound woke both of us out of a dead sleep. It was not subtle. It was a sharp, violent crash from the direction of the living room, the kind of sound that your body reacts to before your brain has fully processed what it was. Daniel was out of bed immediately. I sat up and grabbed my phone. He was in the living room for about 4 seconds before he called back to me. He said, "Call 911. I did. While I was on with the dispatcher, he came back to the bedroom doorway to tell me what he had found. The dining room window had been shattered. Someone had thrown a brick through it from outside. The brick was on the floor surrounded by glass. Daniel had turned the lights on and looked out the broken window, and the street was empty. The dispatcher kept me on the line until officers arrived about 7 minutes later, 2 patrol units and then a third. They photographed the brick, photographed the window, took our statement. Daniel told them about the snap. I pulled it up and showed the officers. One of them got quiet when he saw it. He looked at the image for a long time. He asked how many hours had passed between when the snap was sent and when we first saw it. We told him approximately 5 hours. He wrote something in his notepad. The other officer examined the exterior of the building below the bedroom window. He told us the ground there was soft from recent rain. There were impressions in the soil consistent with someone standing there for a period of time, not just passing by, standing. A police report was filed. A detective was assigned to the case the following day. The department put in a subpoena to Snapchat for account information tied to John's username. The weeks that followed were slow. The detective checked in occasionally, but the updates were thin. At some point, the account stopped appearing in search results, either deleted or banned. The information Snapchat provided through the subpoena did not lead to an identification. The brick was a standard clay construction brick consistent with material from a renovation site 2 blocks away. No prints. 3 months later, the case is technically still open, but functionally cold. We never found out who John was. I still think about the search through my Instagram followers. All those accounts with the name John. I looked at each one I could find, and I tried to identify them. Some I recognized as people I had met through mutual friends. Most I had no connection to at all. Faces I had never seen. People who had been watching my posts for months or years without me ever noticing. One of them knew where I was sleeping. One of them stood outside in the dark and held a phone up to the window and sent me the proof. I disabled my Snapchat username in my Instagram bio the morning after. I went through my privacy settings on every platform I used and locked everything down. I have not slept on a ground floor since. The man on the walk home. The second thing I want to tell you about happened to someone I know, a college student named Tom who went to school in Lexington, Kentucky. He told me this story in detail and gave me permission to share it because he wants people to understand what the Snapchat map feature is actually capable of in the wrong hands. Tom lived off campus in a house with 4 of his friends. They were close to a strip of college bars, maybe a 15-minute walk. On weekends, they walked to and from the bars together most of the time, but occasionally someone made the walk alone. One Saturday night, Tom was heading home by himself around midnight. Decent temperature, not many people out. He cut through a residential street he usually used as a shortcut. Woods on one side, houses on the other. Quiet street. He had walked it dozens of times. About halfway down the block, he became aware of footsteps behind him. He turned to look. Oh man, maybe 30 yards back, walking in the same direction, holding something out in front of him at roughly chest height. Tom could not see clearly what it was. He did not stare long because he did not want to make the interaction into something by drawing attention to himself. He kept walking. The man kept walking. Same pace, same distance maintained between them. Tom turned onto his block. He did not look back again. He got to his house and went inside and stood in the entry hall for a moment, catching his breath, telling himself it was nothing. His phone buzzed, a snap notification from his housemate Luke. Except Luke had lost his phone earlier that evening. Tom knew this because Luke had texted from a friend's phone asking if anyone had seen it. Tom called downstairs for the other housemates. 3 of them gathered around his phone. He turned on his screen recorder before opening it. The snap was a video. It was Tom, walking down that residential street, shot from behind at a moderate distance. You could see the back of his jacket, his stride the tree line on the left side of the frame. The video lasted about 8 seconds. The man behind him on that quiet street had been recording him. What he had been holding out in front of him at chest height was Luke's phone. The group of them stood in the living room and processed what they were looking at. One of them suggested checking Luke's location on the Snap map. Luke had his location enabled on his account. If the phone was still powered on and connected, they could see where it was. They opened the map. Luke's Bitmoji was positioned directly over their house. Tom said the moment he saw that he felt every hair on his body stand up at once. Not because of what it meant about where the phone was, because of what it meant about where the man was. He was still there, somewhere right outside, or right at the edge of the property. The Bitmoji had last updated 9 minutes ago, which on Snapchat's map feature means it may not be showing the current position exactly, but it is close. The 3 housemates went outside with all the exterior lights on, front, back, both sides of the house. They walked the entire perimeter. They checked the back fence, the side gate behind the recycling bins, the area behind the detached garage. Nothing. They came back inside. Tom checked the map again. Luke's Bitmoji had moved, slightly, just a small shift in position, but it was still showing on top of their house. He was somewhere they were not looking. One of the housemates suggested using Find My iPhone to lock the device and trigger the alarm sound. They did it from Luke's iCloud account. The beeping started almost immediately. It was coming from inside the house. Inside, Tom said the beeping had a particular quality to it in that moment. He described it as the sound of a problem becoming significantly worse in real time. They stood in the living room listening to it, and it was clearly coming from the kitchen area. All 3 of them ran for the front door instead of toward the sound. That was instinct. Get outside first. Do not corner yourself in a kitchen with a stranger. As they ran through the entry hall, they heard 2 things in quick succession. The sound of shoes on the floor, heavy, fast moving toward the front of the house, and then the front door slamming open. They got outside in time to see a figure moving fast down the front walk toward the street. Dark clothes, hood up. By the time they hit the sidewalk, he was already at the corner. By the time they reached the corner, he was gone. The street split in 3 directions, and there was no way to know which way he had gone. They checked the neighbors' yards for several minutes, found nothing. They went back inside and followed the sound of the still beeping phone. It led them to the pantry closet off the kitchen, a narrow closet with shelves of dry goods and a mop and bucket. Not a space you would open on instinct when searching a house. Luke's phone was on the second shelf behind a box of cereal. Tom stood in front of that open closet for a long time, thinking about the geometry of it. The man had been inside the house. He had come in through some entry they never identified. He had been in that closet in the dark while they walked to the exterior perimeter, while they stood in the living room looking at a map on a phone, while they discussed what to do next. If they had not triggered the alarm, he might have stayed in there until they went to sleep. Tom told me he still does not entirely understand the man's endgame. His best theory was that the man had somehow known Luke had followed Tom home using Luke's phone in the Snap Map feature and had entered the house looking for something specific, a confrontation, a robbery, something worse. The phone in the pantry suggested he had planned to stay for a while. No police report was filed that night. Tom said it took several days before he could fully articulate what had happened in a way that felt credible, and by then, the window for any useful investigation had closed. He moved out of that house 3 weeks later. He turned off his location on Snapchat and has not turned it back on since. The birds in the door. The last thing I want to tell you about happened in Australia to a guy I will call Daniel Skinner. He shared his story publicly online, and it spread because the video evidence he captured is some of the most genuinely unsettling footage I have ever seen on a phone screen. Daniel was 24 years old. He and his girlfriend had temporarily moved back into his childhood home while their own place was being renovated. His parents owned 3 birds, 2 parrots, and a cockatiel, and people who followed Daniel online were always asking about them. One evening while his parents were out, he filmed 3 short Snapchat story videos showing off the birds. He was sitting in the living room. Behind him was a sliding glass door that led to the backyard. The door was half open. Between the interior and the backyard was a fly screen door. The backyard was enclosed on all sides. The only way in or out was through a single gate on the left side of the house, which was locked. He posted the videos and went back to whatever he was doing. About 15 minutes later, he got a text from a friend. The text said something like, "Hey, by the way, what was that in the window behind you in the last video?" Daniel went back and re-watched the clips on his phone first, and then opened them on his laptop to get a larger view. In the first video, the glass door was fully visible in the background. The screen door behind it was closed. The backyard beyond was dark and empty. In the third video, the same door was briefly in frame. There was a figure at it, standing just outside the screen door with their hands cupped against the glass the way you cup your hands around your eyes to look through a window, to block out ambient light. The figure was there for only a second or two before moving out of frame. Daniel sat with his laptop in a house he had thought was empty and went through both videos frame by frame. The figure was not there in the first clip. It was there in the third clip. Something had approached the door between those 2 videos while he was sitting in the same room talking to his phone, completely unaware. The locked gate, that was what stayed with him. The yard was only accessible through a locked gate on one side of the house. For someone to be at that back door, they would have had to either pick or force the gate without making enough noise for him to notice. Or they had been in the yard already before he came home. He kept the lights on in every room and waited for his parents. He uploaded the videos to a forum online. Within a few hours, other people had started examining the footage carefully. One person enhanced a section of the dining room visible in the edge of one of the frames and identified what appeared to be a mass in the corner that was not consistent with any furniture Daniel could account for. It was not there at the end of this video. Something had been in the dining room, in the corner. While Daniel sat in the next room talking about birds, he called the police. 2 officers came and reviewed the videos. Their working theory was a 2-person break-in attempt that had been abandoned when they realized Daniel was home. One person to create noise at the back and draw him toward the rear of the house, one person to move through the interior. When the plan to lure him outside failed and they realized he was calling the police, they slipped out. The problem with that theory was the doors and windows. Every one of them was locked from the inside when the police arrived. The officers could not identify a point of entry. Daniel does not fully accept the robbery theory either. He never lived in that house again after that night. He told people later that when he was a kid, he used to have recurring nightmares, vivid ones about a faceless person standing outside his bedroom window with their hands cupped against the glass, exactly like what was caught in that video. He said when he moved out at 18, the nightmares stopped completely. He said he has not had one since. The thing all three have in common. I want to bring these three stories together because there is a pattern in all of them, and I think the pattern is the point. In the first story, someone followed me to a location that was not publicly known, stood outside a ground floor window, photographed me while I was asleep, and sent the photograph to my own account. The entry point was a username and a bio, a small detail, something I had put there without thinking about who could see it. In Tom's story, a man stole a phone specifically because the account on it had location sharing enabled. He used that location data to follow Tom home in real time, the phone in the pantry closet, the man in the dark listening to them walk around the house looking for him. In Daniel's story, someone entered a locked yard, stood at a screen door with their hands cupped against the glass, and may have been inside the house at the same time. The only reason any of it was documented was because Daniel happened to be filming his birds and happened to post the video and happened to have a friend who looked closely enough. In every single case, the person outside knew exactly where to go. They had information, an address, a location, a route. In every single case, that information came from an app. I changed everything after what happened to me and Daniel. Every platform private. No location services on any social app. No public username in any bio. I went through every follower I had and removed anyone I could not identify. There is a difference between knowing something in theory and having it land in your body as actual understanding. I knew in theory that putting my Snapchat username in my Instagram bio was a minor privacy risk. I knew in theory that ground floor windows at night were potentially visible from outside. The snap of myself asleep made it real in a way that theory never did. Go through your settings tonight, not sometime this week, tonight. Turn off location sharing, set your accounts to private. Go through your followers list and actually look at it. And if you have your Snapchat username anywhere that a stranger could find it, take it down. John is still out there. We never found him. The detective told us the case remains open, but I know what that means. Somewhere there is a person with a high Snapchat score and no last name, and a photograph of me sleeping that I cannot take back. That photograph still exists, on a phone somewhere, in a folder somewhere, and I will never know what else was taken on the nights I did not happen to check my snaps in time.